Hello, welcome to Traditional Chinese Medicine on Palpitations. My name is Christina Kapothanasis, and I am a licensed acupuncturist here in Hawaii. My husband and I are both acupuncturists. We studied in the Shanghai University of Traditional Chinese Medicine in Shanghai, China, and we returned to the U.S. to take our national board examinations under the NCCAOM. I am also the Executive Director of the Hawaii Oriental Medicine and Acupuncture Association. Today we're going to spend a little time to talk about palpitations, what they are and why we feel them. First of all, we can start off with the definition of palpitations. Palpitations are usually a pounding or throbbing sensation felt in the chest. Patients may also describe this feeling as skipped or missing beats. In terms of Western medicine, the causes of palpitations are generally due to cardiac or problems with the heart. But there are also reasons related to psychiatric reasons and other undiagnosable reasons as well. Some of the causes associated with the heart may be due to premature beats, or they may have specific structural problems with different valves or chambers of the heart that have problems resulting in the palpitations. And for the psychiatric problems, it may be panic attacks that bring them on, and other causes may also include heart disease, or alcohol and drugs may also bring on signs of palpitations. To test for palpitations, the doctor may usually prescribe a test called an electrocardiogram. Different kinds of electrocardiograms or EKGs include resting, exercise, and Holter. A resting electrocardiogram is when the patient is lying peacefully on the examination table to have the electrodes hooked up and done. Exercise electrocardiogram may have patients walk or run on a treadmill to try to produce the irregular beats. And the Holter is a small machine that you can take around with you over a 24-hour or more period, where you are hooked up to the electrodes and a small pouch carries the machine. This can sometimes pick up beats that are a little bit less regular and may not show up on an EKG in the doctor's office. In terms of Chinese medicine, we have three main categories to explain the causes behind palpitations. One is deficiencies in the body, another is emotional stress, and the third is pathogens, external pathogens causing the palpitations. So first we'll focus on deficiencies. Two of the main deficiencies can be qi, or the energy in our body, and blood deficiency. This is resulting in the malnourishment of the heart, because to keep the heart pumping strong and regularly, it is nourished by not only blood, but also by the energy called qi in the body. And when the qi and blood are too weak or too low, deficient, then it can result in malnourishment of the heart and palpitations. Another kind of deficiency includes kidney yin deficiency. Now, the idea of yin and yang we have covered in previous episodes. Yin is represented by the idea of cooling, calming properties. On the other hand, yang is represented by the idea of warm, heat, activity. So in our example of kidney yin deficiency, it's something like a lack of fluids in the kidneys. If there are not enough fluid or yin in the kidneys, that cannot come and control the heart fire. If the heart fire gets out of hand, then we can see palpitations in the patient. On the other hand, we can also have yang deficiency in the body, creating or being the reason for the palpitations. Yang deficiency in the body will have the opposite symptoms where a person is colder. This is also resulting in the warmth not being able to keep the heart beating strong and regularly, so it's something of a malnourished heart. From emotional stressors, we can see thinking too much, worrying too much, stressing too much excitement, and people who are easily startled. These are all kinds of emotions that can bring on palpitations. The first one is actually a syndrome that we just talked about, the kidney Yin Deficiency with the overactive heart fire. It's very easy to directly hurt the heart and cause this fire in the heart to be overactive if we are too excited or too happy, too hyper. This kind of excitement can directly damage the heart. Now, on the other hand, the person that is constantly thinking or worrying too much can also damage the heart, but they will also damage the digestive system. And when you damage the digestive system, then the food that you take in, the food and drink, cannot be properly digested, and you cannot properly absorb the nutrients you need to create the blood and qi in the body. This can also create a dampness. Dampness is the concept of poor water metabolism in the body resulting in a sticky condition. Now, dampness over time can turn into fire. And fire, as you know, is already in the heart and it doesn't need any more. So if we add fire from damp heat in the body, that can also lead to palpitations. I also mentioned the person who startles easily. The person who you walk up to behind to say hi and pat them on the back, and they practically jump out of their seat. These people, traditional Chinese medicine says they have a problem with their gallbladder, which is influencing their heart and causing the palpitations. Lastly, we also talk in terms of external pathogens. In Western medicine, that translate to virus and bacteria. There is a inflammation or infection of the heart that is viral, and it's called myocarditis. This can come on as a common cold, but in both Chinese medicine and Western medicine, it can transfer to the heart and create an inflammation causing the palpitations. Lastly, we can also see palpitations in patients with chronic heart disease. And in Chinese medicine, the corresponding diagnosis is called xiongbi. We say that there is wind and dampness and either heat or cold that come together to cause this B syndrome. And it's usually a more serious kind of condition. If we look at these different syndromes in terms of their signs and symptoms, we can see that in the qi and blood deficiency syndrome leading to malnourishment of the heart, that these people will have more palpitations after they are tired. If they've been exerting themselves, then the palpitations may become more frequent, whereas after they rest or sleep, the palpitations may decrease or be better. These patients may also have a symptom called spontaneous sweating. Spontaneous sweating is in cases when you are not exerting yourself in strenuous activity, but maybe just taking a light walk or doing some light housework, and you sweat very easily, break out into sweat almost like a hot flash. This can be caused by a deficiency of qi and blood in the body. These patients will also feel some kind of lethargy, dizziness, and if we look at their tongue, it might be a little bit pale, and it may have scalloped edges and a thin white coating. This would be a qi Yin deficiency kind of tongue. For the pulse, it would be thin and weak. Pulse diagnosis is a very intricate way of taking the pulse more than just measuring the beats per minute. We can tell about the depth of the pulse, the speed, the rhythm, the different qualities, and the thin or thick, fluid or not, It's quite intricate system of diagnosis. For the second syndrome, the kidney deficiency with the fire in the heart that's overactive, these patients usually are the ones that are thinking too much, working too hard, working long hours, not sleeping enough. That is a very easy way to damage the yin in our body, and as soon as we feel dehydrated, just like when you're dehydrated you feel thirsty, you may feel warm feeling in the throat. This idea of having a deficiency heat in the body is what we're talking about when we say kidney yin deficiency. They may also have dizziness, and two symptoms that are associated with the kidneys are lower back soreness and tinnitus, or ringing of the ears. Yin deficiency symptoms may include night sweats, or sweating while you're sleeping, and an abnormal warmth in the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet. If we look at the tongue, an example tongue for an yin deficiency, you can see that it is quite red compared to the last tongue. It's very small compared to the last tongue. And if you can see on the tip, there are lots of red dots. The tip of the tongue is representing the heart. So this is showing a lot of fire or heat concentrated in the heart. This kind of tongue may be coupled with a pulse that is also thin because there's not enough fluid to fill up the veins, and it might be fast. The faster the pulse, the more heat we know is in the body. On the other hand, if we have yang deficient patient, where yang is again the idea of warmth and energy in the body, qi is energy, and in a more extreme case it is called yang. Greater becomes warmth. So if you don't have enough qi or yang in the body to nourish the heart, you can also see palpitations. These people usually have a more severe type of palpitation, which might be quite regular throughout the day and night. They may also have a pale face, a pale complexion, and be very sensitive to cold weather or air-conditioned rooms. Their tongue will be very pale, and it will be enlarged. It might fill the whole cavity of the mouth. You can see a white coating, which is also indicating cold in the body. And for the pulse, we may see that it's deep and it may be slightly tight, which will indicate cold. It may also be a little bit weak. Now, if we come to the example where the person is overworking and overthinking and they've gone to the direction of damaging their digestive system, if their digestive system is weak, they may create in the body the idea of dampness, which we just described as a kind of poor water metabolism in the body, creating a sticky sensation. Now, the easiest way to see dampness in the body is to look at the tongue. So let's look at the tongue first. And this kind of coating that you see here is very thick. It's concentrated in the middle and the back, but basically it's covering the entire tongue. It is somewhat white, but you can see yellow and even a little brown patches on it. That means that this dampness has been there for a long time and it's starting to turn into heat. Yellow represents the heat in the body. The tongue body itself is also a little bit more red than pink, and red also shows that there's heat in the body. So this patient has had possibly stress for a continued duration, and they have weakened their digestive system. They may also exacerbate the condition by eating a lot of heavy, greasy, dairy, meat, alcohol foods, and further weakening the digestive system to create the dampness, and that dampness over time has created fire. Now the fire rises naturally and it disturbs the heart. So these patients may also have sleeping problems. They may have a bitter taste in the mouth, and they may feel very irritable. If we look at their pulse, we're going to see we call a slippery pulse that indicates sometimes heat and sometimes dampness, and it will usually be a little bit fast. For the person who jumps and startles easily, the gallbladder heart problem, since this energy is more in the chi than it is in the deeper aspects of the body, the tongue may actually be normal. The normal tongue is light pink with a thin white coating. But what we're going to see with these patients is that not only do they startle easily, but they can't sit still. They don't sleep very long. They may be plagued with lots of dreams. And when we take their pulse, we'll notice it is very tight, like plucking a guitar string. Bink, 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 bink. It even makes me a little bit nervous to take the pulse of somebody who has the gallbladder and liver problems. If we go to the viral infection that has transformed, that has gone deeper into the heart, these patients may actually present with signs of a common cold. They may have a sore throat or a cough. They may have a slight fever or feel tired, have achy joints. And because we say that a cold is an exterior condition, which means it's on the lighter, on the more superficial scale of the body, their tongue may also still be normal. The thin white coating on the pink tongue may just be starting to turn yellow, or the tip of the tongue may just be starting to turn red, but basically their tongue may look normal. In the pulse, as described, I described this sort of exterior idea. A cold is considered exterior condition, so the pulse will be slightly closer to the skin, where a normal pulse is a little bit deeper. We call this the floating pulse, and it may be a little bit faster due to the heat. And finally, the patients with heart disease, the chronic condition we call xiongbi, they are going to have pain, chest tightness. They may also have signs of poor circulation in the body. We can see the lips will be purple, and their tongue may be purple all over, or it may have little patches, as we can see in this picture. The patches on the tip of the tongue of purple and on the sides of the tongue in purple indicate liver on the sides of the tongue and heart on the tip of the tongue stagnation. So this person not only has dampness, as you can see by the yellow coating, but the stagnation is quite severe with the purple patches. If we look at their pulse, we may see that it is not flowing very smoothly. It will be the opposite of the person who has dampness in their system. It may be, since their coating is more dry and they have the purple stagnation patches, it may be flowing sort of like grading through the blood vessels. If we look at some of the herbs that we may use to treat these conditions, I've brought a few here today to share with you. In the deficiency case, we may use this herb. This is from the ginseng family. It's called Taizisen. And one of the good qualities of this is that it's not too warm. It actually is a little bit cooling. And it is good for boosting the spleen and the lungs, so the digestive system and the lungs, and it's slightly cooling. This would be one used in the spleen the qi and blood deficiency. This herb is called Dengue, and this herb is used to boost the blood. Another excellent quality of this herb is that it can also promote circulation. So Dengue used in conjunction with the ginseng family would be very good for promoting circulation and boosting the blood. Now, when we look at these slices of Dengue, we can see that there is a distinct difference between the head of the root and the body and the tail of the root. In Chinese medicine, we differentiate. The head of the root is used more to boost the blood, and the tail of the root is used more to circulate the blood. So this may be used in several of the different kinds of syndromes that we discussed today for circulation and boosting the blood. This herb here is called Eagleton. It's an herb that's actually in the calm classification of calming herbs, but it also is used to boost the blood, and it gets out the wind. So we discussed the idea of having wind coupled with heat or cold and dampness in the body for the case of the person with the heart disease or Xiongbi. And it can also be used for the patient who startles easily with the gallbladder and heart problems. So for all the conditions to calm the person and calm the heart, these kind of herbs will all be helpful. This is just one of many that are in the calming classification of herbs. They all have slightly different functions. If we come over here to the Maidong, this is a root. Somebody recently just joked with me, what is the jelly bean herb in my formula? So I had to think a minute. This is Maidong, it's a root, and this is used, it's especially good for the kind of conditions we discussed with the kidney Yin Deficiency resulting in the heart fire overactive. So not only does this root help boost the fluids in the body, but it also helps clear the heat, especially out of the heart. And there are also several other herbs in this category, like Tiandong is another very good example, but Maidong is especially good for clearing the heat from the heart. You may also think of Baihe. It also has calming properties and used to clear the heart fire. So this may be used in the Yin Deficiency, whereas the one beside it is called Zhuru, and Zhuru is used for the conditions that involve dampness. So there are little shavings, and this is especially good for the damp heat conditions. It's good for transforming dampness and clearing the heat. It's also used for those patients who can't sleep well. They can't sleep well because of the dampness and the heat that is disturbing their heart. So this is another example of transforming the heat. And there are many, transforming the dampness and clearing the heat. There are also several other herbs in this category. The last two herbs I'm going to share with you today are especially helpful for heart conditions. Dansen is classified under the herbs that stimulate blood circulation. But one of the excellent properties of this is that it is cooling and it enters the heart directly. So it has cooling the heart, cooling the blood, calming the spirit or calming the heart, so it's good for any insomnia cases, and it is used quite often with many different kinds of heart conditions. It's also used in gynecological issues where women are not having their periods come on time. So this idea of circulating the blood, yet cooling the blood at the same time, and it enters, one of the organs that it enters is the heart, makes it ideal for palpitations. Last but not least is Giganto. Giganto is actually licorice. It's licorice root, and it is stir-fried in honey. So this one tastes excellent. Some formulas actually call for this that has nothing to do with palpitations. This is a very common herb added to formulas. But when it comes to palpitations, it's used as sometimes the prominent herb in a formula. There's even a classical formula named specifically for this herb. It's called Zhigancao Tang, or honey stir-fried licorice formula. And the properties of this herb are that it helps boost the qi, it helps nourish the heart, and it helps calm down any racing hearts or any hyperactivity. So these are some of the herbs that we use to help treat palpitations. Of course, it is not only these herbs we use. We have a wide variety, hundreds of herbs to choose from, and it really depends on which kind of syndrome you fall under. That's all learned by your specific symptoms and signs, by your tongue and your pulse. And then an herbal formula is usually created out of 10 to 15 different herbs, which are brewed into a decoction or a tea, and you can drink them a couple times a day. Acupuncture is also helpful for palpitations, but since palpitations are usually having to do with some kind of damaged yin or heat, then the herbal remedies are usually more effective. Of course, acupuncture and herbal medicine used together are the best pairing. That's all for our show on palpitations today. I hope that you found it interesting and learned something. If you have any other questions about what we talked about, or other questions involving traditional Chinese medicine, what it can treat or how it works, please feel free to give us a call at 221-9814. That's 221-9814. Our email and phone number will be displayed again at the end of the show. Thank you so much, and goodbye.
What's happening to this, people are really cheap. That is different. Kingdom also